Now, even though I did not grow up watching this because this came out in the 90s, I was 1999. I can honestly say that this is hands down one of the greatest projects in Spider-Man history. Spider-Man from 1994 to 1997 had about 5 seasons, and honestly, when I saw that it was 5 seasons, I was like, "Damn, I have to binge this and then try to review it within the span of a couple days." And then it was pretty easy because the second I started watching, I could not stop watching. I will say this: there were some episodes where even I was just like, "Okay, come on," but that's like way much later because this show is basically divided into different chapters, if I'm being honest. For example, the first season is practically a rundown of all of the iconic Spider-Man villains. We even get the start of like the part 1, part 2, part 3 series with the Venom symbiote suit. It was very quick as far as like how Peter got the suit, he turns evil, but when you are a TV show, you kind of have to rush things a little bit, but it does work still. And then I do like that they had built Eddie Brock as this competition for Peter Parker, and you can tell that Sam Raimi basically used that type of Eddie Brock arc for the Spider-Man movies, with Eddie Brock being another photographer who's trying to one up Peter Parker. But I think here it worked a lot better, especially because we had plenty of episodes to run it through, whereas Spider Man 3 was only a movie and they had to kind of cram in that story along with the New Goblin and Sandman story. But the good news about TV shows, you can move things around, stretch things out when needed. And they did a good job at actually showcasing you what the characters look like. Like these characters look actually pretty accurate to the comic. It really felt like I was reading or watching the comic books come to life into a cartoon. It looked really cool, and I love it. I want to say that the biggest surprise for me as far as characters goes was the Hobgoblin. His twist that didn't really get revealed until like season 3 of who his identity was awesome. Matter of fact, we got the Hobgoblin before we got the Green Goblin, and that's pretty bossy, I gotta say. And I was very happy with the story arc because I wasn't really a big Hobgoblin fan until we got to this show, and it was a really good story arc. Now, this show had a bunch of different seasons in its past. Like, example, season 2 was the Nego Genetic Nightmare. Side note, the Insidious Six is practically the Sinister Six. I did like that story. I was very happy to see the Sinister Six, even though they weren't called that. The only big negative I would say is that they were run by the Kingpin and not Doc Ock, and I felt like Doc Ock had to kind of redeem himself much later, in the show, which he did. And I was very happy with it. Morbius was a big turnaround from his god awful movie. He was actually very entertaining in this show, and he was pretty simple. They do overrun a bunch of vampire stories throughout the season, but it's still not something that I completely hate. And yeah, Morbius was a very entertaining character. Felicia Hardy was like the perfect character, Black Hat. Sometimes I was rooting for her to end up with Peter Parker and not Mary Jane. Yeah, we're happy Mary Jane got Peter in the show, but I'll say some stuff about that a little bit later. One of the biggest concerns I had when watching this, I saw this on Disney Plus. I saw the thumbnails of a lot of these shows, and they had basically everybody from the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, the Punisher. I was afraid that those stories were gonna take over. It kind of does feel like what Spider-Man and his Amazing Friends almost did, but this time they managed to still keep the focus on Spider-Man slash Peter Parker. Christopher Daniels Barnes was the voice actor for Spider-Man slash Peter Parker, and I thought he did a pretty solid job. I was a little bit concerned because we didn't get a teenage Spider-Man. We got him like straight out of college, or he's not in high school, so which is unfortunate because that's what I've always wanted to see, a high school Peter Parker in cartoon form. They go through multiple comics, like from Venom's redemption when he takes on the Carnage. Like, I love that character arc. They even have a Spider Verse at the end with a bunch of other Spider-Man. Secret Wars gets played out through the perspective of Peter Parker and aka Spider-Man. We have the Daredevil appear and helping out Spider-Man at some point. They go through almost every Spider-Man comic in this show. And they did a fantastic job. Madam Web, who I was not gonna like, but damn, a lot of these characters I came in hating because of their prior projects, but when you watch them in the show, they're like 100 times better, and that is like one of the biggest advantages and why this is to me one of the greatest shows of all time. Some negatives I would say is they do rehash stories. Like, for example, the biggest rehash that they have is the Mary Jane plot of her being lost. Like I mentioned, they called the Sinister Six the Insidious Six, and this show was on TV, so cartoons were very, very picky on people dying on the show, and it took a while for us to get there. Like, we don't really get people dying. Like, when Mary Jane, we thought she was gone, she actually fell on a portal that was run by Green Goblin, who uh they do a cool story with Norman becoming the Green Goblin, and then him, visiting Harry and wanting to have him turn into the Green Goblin, and that slowly pushes him. They even have a whole wedding episode uh in the last season's first episode. They kind of do a lot of good in that aspect, which kind of helps you take away from what didn't work. And then, like I said, this show is in different chapters. Like, you have from your typical Spider-Man show to, Avengers level stuff. Hydro Man was probably a character I did not like. Maybe because they shoehorned him so much into the Mary Jane arc, and plus he was dating Mary Jane at some point. And then, like I said, they repeated the story of Mary Jane being lost. She was in a Hydro Man. Another story I did not like was the Chameleon and the Red Skull being related. Not that wasn't my problem. My problem was that afterwards, apparently Red Skull had like a son, and turns out that it was Electro. They kind of like they were kind of reaching with that one. It wasn't well placed. Like I said, I kind of wish that we got Black Cat and Spider Man to hook up instead. I felt like that chemistry was a lot better, and plus, I don't know, something about Black Cat in here. Oof, she fine. But to many people, the biggest issue was the finale. So basically, after a mission with Spider-Man, he comes back to his town, but turns out it's a little bit different. Gwen Stacy makes a cameo, and turns out they're the ones that are set to be engaged, only to find out that, he's in the wrong timeline. Eventually, Peter Parker finds Stan Lee. Yeah, that's right. He goes into a universe where it's Stan Lee writing the comics. There's a really cool scene where they fly him to a roof, and then he's like, "Man, I'm stuck up here. I have to wait till the Fantastic Four make it." And then the show ends with Peter Parker and Madam Web trying to go out and find Mary Jane. That's how the show ends. It was supposed to continue on, but honestly, just based on how many times they shoehorn in the whole finding Mary Jane, I think it just overran its course, and I could see why they stopped. Honestly, I was satisfied a little bit with the ending, was because it was just like, okay, there's hope, because the way it was set up, and plus the last episode you have Stan Lee. I think it's like a solid ending, not the greatest, but it was. It still doesn't take away for how much of a fun experience this show is. You can really tell that the writers really cared about the comics. They try to get every arc and story correctly, even with the limitations they had. I thought that it did a well job. Even the theme song in the beginning was pretty cool. But like a more like, I don't know how to describe it, but like it sounded like a really dope ringtone. I've even seen it on other YouTube channels, that theme song. I was just like, even I was like, oh, that's where that came from. So I was very satisfied with this show. I couldn't get enough of it. I started with like, oh great, I have to knock out like 80 episodes almost, and then I wind up like watching because I was just so hooked into how the show looked, how the characters were portrayed. And yeah, again, a couple of little negatives that doesn't take away. I was i was going to give it an A, but I said screw it. It gets an A+. Some things were repeated, were rehashed, but it's an A+. I mean, let's be honest. Like, how can you get mad at the hard work that it did? I mean, really, the only negative was that some stuff was shoehorned and done over and over. But yeah, I'm gonna give this show an A+. It is a great time to watch. You can watch it on Disney Plus right now if you have it. It's a really good show. And we are going to move on to the next project, and that will be another comic book, and it was based on my favorite Spider-Man villain, Green Goblin, as we review the end of the Green Goblin, the Amazing Spider-Man series. Very excited to talk about that. Anyways, take care everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow with that video.